Many know about slavery, but few discuss paper genocide. We did not all come from Africa, and most of us have Aboriginal roots that were stripped away due to reclassification and miseducation. As a Native Black American and a member of the Muscogee Creek Nation, I understand the importance of tracing your lineage. If you want to learn how to trace your genealogy and apply for tribal citizenship, send an email to mike@keymediapro.com to schedule a consultation.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British, man. Quite frankly, you was kings, Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them, and this shit get way deeper than your pigment.
In an interview with The Guardian, a reporter brought up the U.S. election, saying to Janet that Kamala Harris could be the first Black female president of the United States. To which Ms. Jackson replied, "She's not Black, that's what I heard, that she's Indian." Continuing, "Her father's white, that's what I was told. I mean, I haven't watched the news in a few days. I was told that they discovered her father was white."
And look, even she's saying, hey, I haven't really stayed on top of this. I haven't really watched the news, but this is what I heard. And you know what? Janet Jackson is wrong. Is she a legend? Is she an icon? Yes, but if she is wrong, she is wrong. And I'm going to call out Janet Jackson right now for being incorrect, because facts matter and the truth matters, goddammit. And Kamala Harris's father is not white. Kamala Harris's father is white and Hindu. Yeah. He got a little bit of melanin, guys. He's not full white. You know, he's half Irish, half Hindu, but guess what? That still means he's not a Black American, nor a foundational Black American, nor a Native Black American. Let's get into it.
Father was white. She didn't let the reporter know where she heard this false information, but did say about the election, "Either way it goes, it's going to be mayhem." After that interview, a man named Mo El Masri issued an apology on her behalf.
Ooh, some Indian came out to defend his fellow Indian Kamala and put out a false statement on Janet's behalf in support of Kamala. Look how these Indians rocking for their own. Look at this. Jafar, sit down. Habibi, take a seat. Aladdin, relax. What?
Behalf, saying her comments on the vice president were based on misinformation. Janet's rep stepped in and told People Mag that El Masri is not Janet's manager, nor is he affiliated with her camp. The rep says Randy Jackson is Janet's manager. El Masri spoke to Variety saying, "I no longer work for her. I was fired by Janet and Randy after attempts to improve her image in front of public opinion and her fans."
No, you were fired for speaking out of turn and putting words at Janet Jackson's mouth in support of Kamala. You grimy bastard. You grimy bastard. And guys, you see the title, you see the thumbnail. This is not clickbait. Candace Owens has actually done a great job tracing Kamala Harris's genealogy, and she has proven Janet Jackson right. Candace Owens has proved Janet Jackson right when she has heard theories of Kamala not being Black, because when we look into her genealogy, when we look into the paper trail as it relates to Kamala Harris's family tree, we don't see nothing that denotes Native Black American. Not at all.
Everything, because this is officially the only podcast.
Oh, and hold on, guys. You know, I got so much information I got to sift through on a daily for you all. I watch things on 2x speed. So let me put this in normal speed real quick.
You need to listen to today. Yesterday, I received an email from a woman all the way in New Zealand who decided to turn into Sherlock Holmes and fully dedicate herself to investigating Kamala Harris and all of these missing documents and all of these questions. And what she uncovered is potentially so shocking and so alarming that we can officially close the $1,000 bounty because she's earned it. I mean, she's going to receive the full 1K, because this is now getting dark and twisted. And my suspicions about Kamala Harris potentially pretending that the help was her family maybe have been confirmed. I'm going to let you guys judge. Don't want to get way ahead of myself, but do not go away, and welcome back to Candace.
And guys, I must say, I'm not one to champion or support or big up or dick ride Candace Owens, but if the information's right, the information is right, regardless of the source. And I know she did some egregious things, especially when it relates to the whole George Floyd situation. But hey, if she's done some paper trail genealogy on Kamala, Scamala, Obamala, then let's see what the findings reveal.
Even know where we begin here. I mean, I'm just shaken. So look, if you're just jumping into this, you got to stop and you got to go back 2 episodes and play catch up, episode 70 and episode 71, because we're not going to do too much recapping here because I want to jump right into this. Basically, someone came for Janet Jackson and I answered the door. It was a discrepancy that was in Kamala's book, a woman that she said was her grandmother named Beryl, a picture of her and her grandmother Beryl. Here it is.
And game recognized game. Ever since Candace got fired from the Daily Wire, she been trying to score points with the black folks. She said people was coming for Auntie Janet, and Candace answered the door and took off her earrings and said, "I'm a scrap for Janet Jackson's honor." All right, Candace. All right, take a seat.
Is visiting my paternal grandmother Beryl in Jamaica. And then I did just a brief search online and found out that Beryl allegedly died 4 years before Kamala was born. So that's a major red flag. Then I had a little bit of a gut instinct. The photos that were being presented of Kamala and her grandparents, great.
And guys, if that just went over your head, I don't blame you. Candace Owens' voice is a bit annoying if you ask me. But Kamala, her main claim to being black is this photo that Kamala shows. Kamala proudly shows this photo and says, "Hey, this is me and my grandma or my great great grandma or something. This is us, right?" Well, when Candace's team did the genealogy, it turns out Kamala's grandmother died 4 years before she was born. So this woman that she's posing in a photo with, who doesn't look happy at all, who looks like, damn, I'm paid to be here right now. This is most likely the help. This is most likely a nanny. This is most likely a Jamaican house servant of sorts that posed for a photo op. I mean, how are you going to take a photo with this woman, claim it's your grandmother, when your grandmother died 4 years before you were born? Guys, the truth is stranger than fiction.
Feel that maybe this woman was the help. And I'm not saying that because she's black. I'm not racist against black people. I am black. I'm saying this because there's just a lack of emotion there. Like, I don't know if it's just my grandparents, but when they're with you, they're like super cuddly and cute. And this woman's just kind of very serious each time that she's being featured here. So anyways, what happened was we sourced Beryl's birth certificate. And then my instinct got a little bit stronger because her name was spelled differently in the birth certificate, right? So you see that it says Beryl spelled Beril, Magdalene. And we know for a fact, by the way, so people that are submitting other birth certificates, this is definitively the correct birth certificate because it says Iris Finnegan. And we know based on Kamala and Kamala's father, Donald J. Harris, that Iris Finnegan is the mother of Beryl. And then we see that her name changes, the spelling of her name changes, rather, by the time that we looked at her marriage certificate. Suddenly you can see that the marriage certificate has her name being spelled with a Y. Now that to me signaled that maybe she definitely is the help, and I'll tell you why. So my grandfather, before he passed away, maybe like 10 years before he passed away, I got kind of obsessed with trying to find all of these documents pertaining to his life, because I realized like that's my ancestry. And I was having a ton of trouble mining his grandmother's information because on each document, her name was spelled differently, as well as other people in the family. And I was like, Granddad, why is everyone's name spelled differently depending on the document? Like, this is very confusing. Why is it sometimes spelled Liza versus Eliza versus like Lizbeth? That was his grandmother's name. And he explained to me that they didn't know how to read and write. So you forget this. You forget that you had a world, the majority of people couldn't read and write, especially if you were not considered like a high class person. My grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm. And so what that meant was even if you had a name, if you couldn't read and write, you were going up to the register, whether it was for birth, whatever it was, and you were just telling somebody the name. You weren't saying like, hi, it's Candace, Candace. You're just saying Candace, and one person might spell it Candis, somebody might spell it Candice. If you do not know how to read and write, you don't recognize these discrepancies. inconsistencies. So that actually I thought was a good thing in terms of like my idea that this woman could have potentially just been the help, maybe like on my scent. But I didn't want to be too convinced. Obviously, you know, I lean into the conspiracy mindset because we've been lied to so many times. But like I said, we did find that marriage certificate between Beryl and Lawford.
And shout out to Momo. Momo says, isn't Candace Owens also Jamaican? Yes, yes. Candace Owens is not a native Black American. This is why heritage is important. This is why genealogy is so paramount. Ever since she got fired from the Daily Wire, she's trying to do a new grift where she's really trying to cosplay as a Black American and act like she's a part of our community. And look, she's defending Janet Jackson. Look, she's interviewing Kanye and going on Black podcasts. No, 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 no. You're not like us. But if you got some valid info, we're going to take a look.
Newland, which was in July of 1944. And I want to be clear, guys, we know for a fact this is the correct Beryl. So we're not confused here and looking for more documentation when it comes to the birth or the marriage because the correct parents are listed. You can see Patrick Finnegan is listed. And so we know that Beryl's parents are Iris Finnegan and Patrick Finnegan. So that is the correct parent, the correct marriage certificate. But we had no idea who Lawford Newland was. We had no idea that Beryl had allegedly been married after she birthed Donald Harris. That would be Kamala Harris's father. Thought that was like quite strange. She would have been 6 years old in 1944. Donald Harris was born in 1938. So this means that she got married to this guy, Lawford Newland, and she had a 6-year-old. So I thought that was quite strange. I couldn't find anything on Lawford Newland, but somebody on the team was able to determine that he arrived on a ship to New Orleans. He arrived in New Orleans, from Jamaica in May of 1943. So we're showing you here the ship manifest, and Lawford Newland is on the ship, and he is listed as, he's listed as a Negro. He's Black. It says his marital status is
how to make a mean pot of greens. In fact, people used to ask me to make greens for them for Christmas. One year, I had so many that I had to wash that we ended up washing them in the bathtub.
Collard greens in a bathtub, an image that's cheap and classless.
Yeah, y'all, this is wild. This is wild. And although I don't rock with Candace, I got to admit, when I was watching this, I was geeking out a bit because this is the meticulous paper trail genealogy research that I do with dozens of Black Americans each and every week. We look through the census, birth certificates, death certificates. And when we do that, we typically find not ancestors coming from a slave boat from Africa, but we find ancestors that are affiliated with American Indian tribes.
To know, Mike is the real deal. His information is real. He's a humble brother, and he's all about the information. He's not about, personal gain or personal applause, personal credit. This is about our nation. It's not about one individual, but it's about us collectively as a people. And Mike is all about that, So we stand behind the brother 100%.
If you have any doubt, get it out your head immediately. So yeah, like I'm going to continue to work with Mike as much as I can. So I want to say thank you, Mike, for actually taking the time out and talk with me and my husband. Like you definitely informed us on a lot of things. And the people out there that's watching, he will also inform you on a lot of things that you may not even know about. So I want to say thank you again, Mike.
Trip the year before he got married to Beryl. So quite strangely, he went to New Orleans, and then I guess he at some point had to have gone back just a year later to get married. We still have not been able to locate the relevant marriage certificate between Oscar Harris. Now that's, again, Kamala's dad. His father is Oscar Harris. We cannot find that marriage between Kamala's grandfather and Beryl. So that's like a huge question mark there, right? Like where is...
And if any of you guys are getting lost in the technicalities of all this genealogy research, basically what Candace is saying is the math ain't mathin'. If You do somebody's genealogy, like how I meet with black folks every week and help them trace their family tree, right? It shouldn't bring up that many questions, like your grandparents are married. Here's their marriage document. This is your great great grandparent. Here's their census record. But when we go to look at Kamala Harris's ancestry, the math ain't math and it's not making sense. You said that this is you in a photo with your grandma, but your grandma on record died 4 years before you were born. There's no record of your great grandfather marrying your great grandma. It's just not making no sense.
That marriage certificate, if you guys find it, we're checking our emails. And we're obviously aware that there are a lot of different barrels that are being born in Jamaica at different times. Some people are like, this could be the case of two barrels, and they're sending us different birth certificates. Like I said, we know we have the correct birth certificate. We know we have the correct marriage certificate. We know for a fact that this barrel did get married and that Donald should have been 6 years old when she got married. So it begs the question, was this her second marriage? Did she have a child out of wedlock with Oscar Harris? Did she have Donald? And then did she get married? Because it lists her on her marriage certificate as a spinster, which means that she's not married, obviously. And then she gets married to Lawford Newland. And then at some point they would have had to divorce if she remarried and got married to Oscar. So she would have had to have gotten with him, had a child with him, married somebody else, divorced that somebody else, and then gotten back together with Oscar and gotten married. That's like a lot of movement. Again, we don't have any documentation, so we're not going to speculate. But Beryl in general, I'm not describing her as the dog that's not barking, okay? So some people were saying, well, I've seen on different websites that there was also a Beryl Harris that died in 1995, and maybe this could potentially be her. We've done the math on that. No, that woman would have been born in 1914. Like I said, we know for a fact Beryl was born. The birth certificates are probably the most relevant source because you obviously wouldn't have a birth certificate written years later after the fact that your child was born. It says that Beryl was born in 1917. But I started going back to that piece that Donald Harris wrote. Remember, the first time that we were kind of introduced to the fact that Kamala Harris was Black, it was because Donald Harris wrote this piece, which came right behind Kamala Harris's book, Reflections of a Jamaican Father. And I just would like to, by the way, really stress to you how Black he was trying to suddenly make them. Like, I'm just going to read you the first sentence of this.
And before we get into this, let's remember Jamaican does not mean Black. Jamaican is a nationality. That's not an ethnicity. There's Chinese Jamaicans, Irish Jamaicans, Asian Jamaicans, and everything in between. Just because you're Jamaican, just because you live in Jamaica, don't mean you're Black. Their whole motto was one nation out of many. So a lot of us had, the wool pulled over our eyes with the Jamaican, because when we think about Jamaicans, we think about Black folks. Nah, go to Jamaica and it'll surprise you.
By Donald J. Harris, Kamala's father. As a child growing up in Jamaica, I often heard it said by my parents and family friends, "Member where you come from." And then he goes on and he writes, my one big regret is that Kamala and her sister did not come to know very well the two most influential women in my life, Miss Chrissy and Miss Iris. Okay, so those are his grandparents, according to him. Those are both of his grandmothers, maternal and paternal. And then the whole piece is about his grandmother, his two grandmothers. And he wrote, both of my grandmothers had the strongest influence on my early upbringing. And then in parentheses, he writes, not to exclude, of course, the influence of my dear mother, Miss Beryl, and loving father, Mass Oscar. Like, I think it's supposed to be like Massa, like Mass Oscar. Very strange. Again, nobody that I know calls their mom Miss Beryl, calls their grandmother Miss Iris, and calls their other grandmother Miss Iris. There's something about that doesn't strike me as familial. But again,
and the Massa makes sense because word on the street is her father descends from an Irish slaveholder in Jamaica. That there's supposed to be a town still named after the family in Jamaica present day. So when we see the Massa, yeah. Ooh, when Janet says, "Hey, I heard her daddy's white," yeah, he descends from Irish slave traders, plantation owners, mixed with some Hindu. But all of a sudden, just like tethers do, they start trying to cosplay as some black folks when it's convenient.
And that's speculation. Doesn't matter. Maybe there is this strange family where everyone, like, they address their mom as Miss, and they address their grandmother as Miss, and they address their other grandmother as Miss. Like that, it really isn't up to us to make any conclusions. But that's the first and last time that he mentions his mother, Miss Beryl. Okay, which signals to me that my theory about her having died young, you're saying you're raised by your grandparents, but your mother is around, but you don't talk about your mother or speak about your mother at all in this entire piece, signals to me that this is correct and your mother died early, okay? You're not mentioning her for a reason. So then this gets crazy. I get an email. Actually, I got 2 emails, but this one in particular made me sit up straight in bed. Like, I'm not kidding. I was like about to fall asleep, and I just decided to check the email box, and I sat up. I sat up just like this and started texting everyone. And I woke my husband up. I was like, you have to read this email. This is completely crazy. It came all the way from New Zealand. Shout out to New Zealand. I'll be on tour there soon, you guys. Get out there.
And we just had a Cash App come through from Cameron. Cameron, I appreciate the support. Thank you for supporting the show.
Buy some tickets because we're going to talk about this now. That's the only thing I'm going to speak about in New Zealand. But I'm going to just read this email to you because it's just incredible. Kia ora from New Zealand, Candace. My name is blank. And after your first podcast about the family of Kamala Harris yesterday, I went down the rabbit hole all day looking for photos of Beryl Finnegan Harris's brothers and sisters, as you asked. I was so intrigued and I wanted to take up your challenge. I could not find those photos, but I did come across a record that you might be interested in. I noticed on Kamala's birth certificate, you showed that her father, Donald Harris, was 26 at her birth in 1964, giving him a presumable birth year of 1938. That is correct. He was born in 1938. I'm just saying that as an aside. I came across the attached record of a 1-year-old child who died in 1940 in St. Anne's Parish. This infant's name was Donald Harris. You will notice the baby's father's name that is given was Albert Harris, and there's no mother mentioned. However, you will be interested to notice that a person listed as present at the death of the child was none other than Beryl Harris. She has also signed the death record. What are the chances that Beryl had her own baby named Donald in 1938 and then was also in attendance of the passing of a baby named Donald Harris in 1940? Weird, right? And just to be clear, that we're going to show you that certificate because it would mean that there were 2 Donald Harris babies born that Beryl was around. One was hers and one, I don't know, guys. It's getting weird. I'm going to finish this email, then we're going to talk about it. I have looked for the infant's father, Albert Harris, and cannot find a lot about him. Albert's father name was Abraham Harris. I believe it is possible he was married to a Violet Fearon on the 6th of March, 1935. No record of her passing, so why was she not at her child's death, but Beryl Harris was? Was this baby Beryl's or Violet's? If Donald Harris passed 1 year old, who is the man claiming to be Kamala's father? Oh my gosh, chill. She wrote, make it make sense. I'll keep digging.
Come on, y'all. The rabbit hole goes deep. If we got a person that's a baby that's dead, death record signed by your grandmother, and the same name of that baby that died is the name of your father, but your father also claims to have been born 2 years prior in 1938, it don't make no sense. It looks like, if we're just going to speak candidly, it looks like the person that she's claiming as her father, it looks like the one strand that she's claiming her black ancestry comes from, it looks like that may not even be her father at all. We got a death record for the person that's supposed to be your father. Who's this dude? What's going on?
Chills. I was like, what are you talking about? If you opened this email so fast, it was crazy. And let me just show you the attachment. Chills. I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out all over again. It's hitting me. It's a second wave here of what? So yes, you will see that listed here. This is a death certificate that is on the 29th of November, 1940. Okay. In St. Anne Parish. That obviously is where her family is from. And yes, the child's name was Donald Harris. The child died before the child turned 2. So this would mean that it is plausible that this child was born in 1938, the exact same year that Donald J. Harris, Kamala's father, was born. Okay. Can you pull it back up? I'm not done reading through this. Okay. So you have also, it says the certified cause of death is fever and a cold. And it's letting you know, it says the duration of the illness, so that this baby was sick for 1 month, rest in peace. And it does mention that that baby is the son of Albert Harris. And just as this person speculates, it is signed by Beryl Harris. And it tells you, because you're supposed to include this, the signature of the person who was present at the death. And it says Beryl Harris, present at the death.
Guys, the rabbit hole runs deep. Guys, this makes absolutely no sense. This is who Kamala wants us to believe is her father, Donald J. Harris, born in 1938, the same year that we have another Donald Harris dying in 1938. And the reason why this is so profound, because on the surface level, you guys could say, well, Mike, it's just a coincidence. There was a baby named Donald Harris that died at the same year that a baby named Donald Harris was born. But here's the weird part. This Donald Harris's mother signed the death certificate for the other Donald Harris that died at the same year this Donald Harris was allegedly born. Come on, make it make sense. Again, you guys could say on surface level, hey, this is just a case of the same name. For example, my name is Michael Lane. That's a pretty common name. I'm sure, even though I'm born in 1994, I'm sure there was maybe another baby named Michael Lane that died in the same year I was born. But you know what would be freaking weird about that? If my mother signed the death certificate for that other baby named Michael Lane that died in the same year that I was born. Do you guys understand now? I hope I've made it clearer than Candace Owens was able to disseminate the information. But guys, this makes no sense. What is Kamala hiding? The truth is stranger than fiction, by far. By far.
And that is at Mount Moriah in St. Anne. Now, I want to be clear, there is no place to put the mother's name. So it's not like there's anything like strange here. I just think that if this is this Beryl's child and this Beryl Harris was married to this Albert Harris or together with this Albert Harris at some time, like that is the reason why it just says that present for the death. Like literally, who else would be present? If your child is dying less than 2 years old, okay, barely 2 years old, who would you allow to be there in your place? There's no mother on earth that wouldn't be next to their child. So it is very heavily suggested that Beryl Harris was there for the presence of her son, Donald Harris, dying. And that would put that approximate birth of that baby at 1938. Stop the press. Stop the press. Okay. So you can imagine me. Now you're me sitting up straight. Like, what is going on here? Like, actually, what do I know about Kamala's father? Like, this could be a coincidence. I'm sure. Yeah, I guess you could have like a lot of Beryls that are giving birth to Donalds in the year 1938 in St. Anne Parish. Of course, like you have to consider every possibility here, but also consider that this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Okay. So then I received a second email. Okay. Very interesting here. Very interesting here. And I'm just going to read the email. I'm just going to read the email and take you through this. What happens when I go through my info box? I tell you guys to message with deets. This email says, "Hi, Candace. See the death certificate below indicating that Beryl Christie was a domestic servant in 1936 when her infant daughter died. So there's another, and this person has written Beryl Christie. And
Fred said, who was Donald J. Harris's mother? Apparently, it was Beryl Christie. And what we're learning here is that the man that they allege is her father really may not even be her father, really on some real CIA psyop type shit. But if that is her father, well, his father was a Irish slave master, and his mother was a servant or a Jamaican slave of sorts. So, you know, this gets weird when we find that this Beryl, who was a servant, died 4 years before Kamala was born, yet Kamala posts pictures of her with some woman she claims is her grandmother. Guys, the rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper.
Lost her daughter, and I'm going to pull it up here at the bottom of this email. She talks about like the birth dates. I'll get to that later. Let's put. Do you guys have a close up of this? Yeah. Okay. So you can see here it is Beryl Christie, and this would mean not only did Beryl Christie lose a child in 1940, but prior to that, Beryl Christie lost a daughter in 1936. Okay. Again, all we have here is Beryl Christie. We know that this is potentially the right Beryl. Again, there could be another Beryl Christie going around. I don't want to completely close the door on that, but it is interesting. And I'll tell you why this struck me as incredibly interesting, because when we spoke about the death certificate yesterday, right, and we spoke about this young death of a woman, she's particularly died, Beryl Christie, of fibroids.
And yes, T, Kamala wrote that book. It was already being set up for her to become president. Yes, that book, that memoir that Kamala Harris published was in 2019. The only evidence that we have to support Kamala claiming she's black is her own book, where she has a picture with a black lady she claims is her grandma. But when we go through the paper trail genealogy, we find that woman who's a grandmother died 4 years before she was born. So the math ain't mathin'. We know presidents are selected and not elected. And if they know several years down the line, we need to do an Obama 2.0. We need to get an immigrant that looks like they could be a little black and get them to cosplay for the black vote. Well, hey, we're going to position Kamala.
Related to a hysterectomy. So if there is a Beryl Christie that had back-to-back, had lost children in some regard, you could imagine that she might have been injured internally. This is a long time ago. You would imagine that the procedures, obviously, you know, are not what they are today. And it is plausible that that woman died young of fibroids from a hysterectomy related to the fact that she had two troubling births, whatever it is, carrying children didn't work out for her. I just thought like, okay, but the big part about that second one is that we now know for a fact that there was a Beryl Christie that was, in fact, a domestic servant. Can you pull that back up again? Because I want to point that out so people can see this. The last one, the close up of it, if we can. You can see that she is listed as a domestic servant. That girl is listed as the daughter of Beryl Christie. You can see that in that where it says rank, profession, or occupation, daughter of Beryl Christie, domestic servant. I don't know, guys. Like I said, I'm trying to now, I'm putting in columns to sort through the various Beryl Christies that were born around this time. Like I said, you guys keep sending me stuff, but just to make sure you're filtering yourself, we know for a fact that Beryl Christie was born in 1917. We know for a fact that Beryl Christie got married in 1944. To Lawland Newford, or whatever his name is, Lawford Newland, pardon. And so we don't need a bunch of documents speculating that it could be a different birth, because her parents are listed, and Kamala and her father have confirmed that her parents are Iris and Patrick Finnegan. Okay. So we know those are the people that we are looking for.
Come on, guys. Now, do you understand the importance of paper trail genealogy research? Kamala Harris could have pulled a Obama and really passed for one of us. She talks like us, she acts like us when she needs to. But when we look through the paper trail genealogy, we find that truth is stranger than fiction. And when Black Americans do the same and finally map out their family tree, we learn that most of us don't descend from African slaves. about slavery, but few discuss paper genocide. We did not all come from Africa, and most of us have Aboriginal roots that were stripped away due to reclassification and miseducation. As a Native Black American and a member of the Muscogee Creek Nation, I understand the importance of tracing your lineage. If you want to learn how to trace your genealogy and apply for tribal citizenship, send an email to mike@keymediapro.com to schedule a consultation.
The first time ever since obviously being on YouTube for over 5 years, I have ever booked a session, and man, I'm glad that it was with you, Mike. And I look forward to being one of your testimonials of I'm going down this journey, so my family can start to get a sense of who really we are, and not just leave it as stories out there floating, but really get to the weeds of things, and I can do better, and I can teach my daughter exactly, not from her mom's side, but from her father's side, what your bloodline really is, and be proud of that. I thank you.
You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and them British men. Quite frankly, you was kings Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them, and this shit get way deeper than your pigment. What?
So we know those are the people that we are looking for. Oddly enough, though, because a lot of people have been pointing out the fact that in her birth certificate, even though we know that that's her mom, Iris, that's the mom's name, Iris Finnegan, it says Magdalene. And then suddenly it converts to Christy. Well, I just wanted to point out to you, because that was a question we were getting a lot, is why would she take on Christy? In Donald Harris's piece, he writes explicitly that Miss Iris, so that's Kamala's great grandmother, that her husband was known as Mr. Christie. So I'll read you that paragraph. It says, Miss Iris, mother of 8 children, I can't find 8 children, by the way, was the sweetest and gentlest person one could meet, but underneath it was a tough farming woman who ran the cane farm at Thatch Walk, jointly owned with her husband, Mr. Christie. So the reason she may have put Christie or started using Christie as a middle name is because that would mean that her father was being called Mr. Christie. Again, directly from Donald J. Harris, who I'm now very interested in. I'm now very interested in this particular Donald J. Harris. Obviously, very easy way to debunk this, and maybe there really was just another Beryl Christie that happened to have a child named Donald in the same year from the same parish, would be to just take a look at Kamala's father's birth certificate. And we can't find that.
Hey, on some Obama, Trump, where's the birth certificate type shit, right? Shout out to American Holocaust Survivor. They say she should be able to show old family reunion pics. None of us have dots on our heads. Hey, I found her family reunion pics, and this is what it looks like. I see dots on the head. The arrow was pointing to Kamala. I know you probably couldn't recognize her there for a moment, but that red arrow is pointing towards Kamala Harris. That's her people. That's her family. Let's play, instead of Where's Waldo, let's play Where's the Black Person. I don't see one, do you? But I digress.
We quite literally cannot find that, and I find that to be very strange. People were writing to me saying, hey, it looks like this was purposefully removed, that his birth certificate was removed. And I would just like to find it, because it would just kind of let me be at ease and know that there's nothing further to look.
Guys, this is some CIA psyops type shit. Her father was allegedly born the same year that someone of the same name died, and his mother signed the death certificate for the other baby with the same name that died at the same year that he was born. And as a genealogist, I can tell you, birth certificates are public record. If I know your first and last name, I can find your birth certificate. It's not hard to find. It's all public. So the fact we can't find a birth certificate on her father, oh Lord, that's the cherry on top. That's how you know this is a psyops. We got more questions than answers.
look at other than this child, because it's just a very, very strange thing. Okay, I also wanted to just go over everything we do know about Donald J. Harris, because I was interested in him suddenly. And the first thing is, he, according to him, like Miss Crishy, in this piece, is his paternal grandmother. He calls her Miss Crishy. He acknowledges that they were descendants of the slave owner Hamilton Brown. And he is the founder of Brownstown. That's another thing that strikes me as very odd, and maybe there's something I'm missing here.
I told you guys earlier, her daddy is a descendant of a slave master that has a town named after him. Didn't I say that? Don't you know me as the king of receipts? It's called Brownstown. Damn, she's trying to cosplay as one of us, and they got a whole town in Jamaica named after her slave holding ass ancestors. Okay.
Here, but if you were a person that established a town and you had over 1,000 slaves, would you really just openly be married to some of these slaves? Like, is that something that would happen? I know that obviously they would have relations with the slaves, and that's something that is a reality. But in the way that they speak about their family, it's like they were just openly married with slave owners and slavers, which I find to be a little bit strange. As I said, he claims that Miss Crishy owned and operated a dry goods store, and that she died in 1951 at the age of 70. Then we have Miss Iris, who he mentions, that's the maternal grandmother. We can actually get up this, we can get up the family tree so people can see this. He mentions Miss Iris, and that is the person that he completely fawns over. That's his maternal grandmother, Miss Iris. She was a farmer, an educator, he claims. And he also says, which I find to be quite strange, remember, he says he has the strongest relationship with Miss Iris, doesn't even mention his mother, Beryl. By the way, these photos are the ones that have been provided by Kamala herself and her father. I cannot verify that these are accurate photos, but we're just going to use the ones that they're given. But what's quite strange is he says that Miss Iris's ancestry is unknown to him. So I guess they never had that conversation, despite how close they are. Again, she jointly owned the farm with her husband, Mr. Christie, and he died in 1981 at the age of 93. Sorry, pardon. He says that she died at the age of 93, at the age of 1981. That's Miss Iris. Then you have Joseph Alexander Harris. Now, that is the person who we are to understand that she was married to. The Harris name comes from his paternal grandfather, Joseph Alexander Harris. He was the landowner and the agricultural produce export, and he refers to the family property as Orange Hill. I think we need some Jamaicans to go out here and just start verifying stuff for me. And that Uncle Newton took over Orange Hill and started a limestone mining and brick producing operation, in addition to cattle, grass, fruit.
Come on, y'all. Come on. Critical Thinker says we aren't playing with her. Candace pulled up her genealogy. That's what I'm saying. I don't rock with Candace Owens, but as a full-time genealogist, I appreciate the paper trail research she did. This is what I teach you guys how to do day in and day out. We got to do this for our own families to learn where we come from and what our history is, because it's not what they taught us in a public education school system. The same kind of diligent effort that Candace and her team went through to trace Kamala's genealogy, we got to do it with ours. But yeah, this is wild, guys. She wants to cosplay as one of us, and turns out she descends from slave masters with a whole town named after them.
Pimiento farming of earlier times. Now, again, I am just trying to understand how she came from a middle-class background. I mean, people that had slaves were super wealthy. It sounds like they always owned land, that they always potentially had servants. So I'm just trying to understand where this middle-class background comes from. My producer put in a note here that people in the live chat are saying that it's a Creole language that's native to Jamaica when he starts speaking in this tongue.
Damn, Candace is so not like us. You mean Creole? You mean Creole? She said a Creole. That's Creole, Candace. The words you're looking for is Creole.
Okay, I literally didn't know that. I'm sorry, but I just found that he was writing in this way, which I found to be quite strange. I felt like he was trying to sell to us they were definitely Jamaican, or they were like descended from slaves, and they had slaves. So obviously his family actually had slaves, thousands of slaves there. So I thought that he was trying to lean into the slave language. So I'll correct that if that's actually English Creole. Okay, I'm going to take a break here and just speak about one of the sponsors of the show before I get into some of your comments and we speak more about this. This episode is sponsored by Nimi Skincare.
Hey, Hey, time out. T. Delgado. We know that Candace is not foundational. We know that Candace Owens is not a native Black American, but if a tether gonna snitch on her fellow tether, I'm gonna take notes while that tether snitching, okay? They say the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I ain't gonna go that far with no Candace Owens, but I am gonna peep game and take notes when the tethers start infighting and snitching on one another. Come on. Come on. We got some tether on tether violence, y'all. Some tether on tether crimes are occurring, y'all. Let's talk about it. I got my popcorn ready. Let's go.
So first responding to that, yeah, I don't know if he was trying to write English Creole. I actually never knew that that was a language that was native to Jamaica.
And yes, she just said Creole again. She keeps saying Creole like Crayola. It's Creole, woman. It's Creole.
But I do find it very interesting that that's something that he included all throughout this piece. And I would question some of the spelling of things like, is Creole, do you actually spell Y-U for you? Or is he just trying to basically signal to us that this was his family? Anyways, literally did not know that. So you learn something new every single day. So I also had a ton of other people that introduced some other things that I was not aware of. And I'm just going to kind of go through other things that people brought up that I found to be very interesting. First and foremost, someone told me to take a look again at Kamala's birth certificate. Chris, I don't know if I told you to pull that, but going to her original birth certificate, yeah. So they said, this person emailed me and they were just like, okay, Candace, it is amended in the middle there. So you see there's a stamp in the middle of her birth certificate that says amended 1 of 2.
And you see what it says for her mother? Caucasian. Yeah. And what does it say for her father? Jamaican. Jamaican is a nationality that's not an ethnicity. You see how they playing in our face? The mother's Caucasian, even though she's a Hindu Indian, and the father's a Jamaican. The color or race of the father is Jamaican. Jamaican is not a color. Jamaican is not a race. That is a nationality. Wow. Her mother is a Caucasian from India, and her father is a Jamaican from Jamaica. Why isn't her mother an Indian from India? Why is her mother not an Indian from India? And why don't we be more specific about her father's ethnicity and then put his birthplace as Jamaica? Yo, this is wild. Oh, and please don't tell me Candace is out here offering genealogy services for $1,000. Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord. Lord, oh Lord. People out here trying to tax Black folks. Okay, I do genealogy consultations for $75. If you want me to do your family tree, help you with tribal affiliation, we can talk about that during the consultation. But yeah, a lot of people getting over on this genealogy research. A lot of folks. Matter of fact, Ancestry.com is one of them, y'all. Ancestry.com is one of the main culprits getting over on our community. Watch this, y'all. Candace wants 1,000. Well, if I look up a genealogy specialist with Ancestry.com says that they'll have a genealogy specialist help me out for prices as low as $3,500. Oh Lord, look how they try to screw over Black folks. If you want a genealogy specialist to help you out with Ancestry.com, you need to pay them the price of a used Honda Accord. Now you understand why I do what I do. Now you understand, in a time where on a national level, Black Americans are getting in touch with our heritage, we're questioning genealogy, we're questioning slave narratives, and we're realizing, hey, grandmama always told us that we native. At a time like this, when it's paramount for all of us to do genealogy research, we got folks like this trying to grift the hell out of our community. It's a damn shame, y'all. It's a goddamn shame.